I still remember the exact second the lie cracked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a vibration on my nightstand at 11:03 p.m. that felt like a gunshot in a quiet room. My wife had said she'd be working late. Said it casually, like she always did, like it was nothing worth remembering. I had nodded, kissed her cheek, and told her to drive safe. I believed her because belief had become muscle memory. That night, the house felt hollow. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears. I'd left a lamp on in the living room, more habit than hope, and tried to distract myself with a game I wasn't really watching. Every so often, I glanced at the door, imagining the sound of her keys, the soft sigh she made when she kicked off her shoes. Instead, my phone lit up. Unknown number. At first I ignored it. Then it rang again, and something in my chest tightened. Not fear exactly, more like instinct. I answered. "Hey, this is Mark," a man's voice said, hesitant, confused. "I'm so sorry to bother you this late. I was trying to reach your wife." There was a pause, just long enough. I think I misdialed. I sat up straighter. "Her phone's probably dead," I said automatically. "She's at work. Late night." Another pause, longer this time. "Work," he repeated softly. "Right. Yeah, that makes sense." The way he said it didn't make sense at all. Before I could ask anything else, he added, "Again, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt," and hung up. I stared at my phone like it might explain itself. My heart was beating faster now, but my mind was still trying to keep the peace. People misdial all the time. Bosses call employees. Late nights happen. Normal things. Ordinary explanations. Still, I checked the call log. The number wasn't saved. I typed it into my contacts anyway, just to see. Nothing came up. I told myself to let it go. I told myself trust meant not chasing shadows. I told myself I was tired. But sleep wouldn't come. I walked through the house, turning off lights that didn't need to be on, straightening pillows that didn't need fixing. In our bedroom, her side of the bed was still neatly made. No clothes tossed aside. No sign she'd rushed out or planned to come back late. Just absence. Around midnight, I texted her, "Everything okay?" No reply. By 1, my imagination had started doing that cruel thing where it fills silence with worst-case scenarios. Accident. Emergency. Hospital lights. I called her phone. It rang until voicemail picked up. Her voice sounded normal. Cheerful, even. I hung up without leaving a message. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to remember when working late became so common. It hadn't always been this way. We used to debrief our days over dinner, complain about coworkers, laugh about nothing. Somewhere along the line, her stories got shorter. Her eyes drifted when I talked. Her phone lived face down. I'd noticed. I just hadn't named it. At 1:37 a.m. She finally texted back, "Still here. Long night. Don't wait up." No apology. No explanation. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Something about it felt rehearsed. Polished. Like it had been typed before. I thought about the man on the phone. Mark. The way he'd hesitated. The way he'd said her name, like he knew me without knowing me. Like he'd expected someone else to answer. I didn't confront her. Not then. I didn't call the number back. I didn't dig through drawers or demand answers. I did what I'd been doing for months without realizing it. I swallowed the feeling and told myself tomorrow would be clearer. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to a house that no longer sounded like home, one truth settled heavy in my chest. Whatever my wife was doing late at night, it wasn't something she wanted to bring back through our front door. And someone else already had her number memorized. The next morning unfolded like nothing had changed, which somehow made everything worse. She came home just before 7. I heard the door open, the careful way she closed it, trying not to wake me. I stayed still, eyes shut, breathing slow. When she slipped into bed beside me, she smelled like a hotel, clean, generic, unfamiliar. Not her shampoo, not the soap we kept in the shower. She kissed my shoulder lightly, a gesture meant to signal normalcy. Control. "Rough night," she whispered. I murmured something noncommittal and let her believe I was half asleep. When she finally drifted off, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying that phone call again and again. Mark. The hesitation. The silence that said more than words. At breakfast, she talked about spreadsheets and deadlines, about a project that had gone sideways. She sounded practiced, confident. Her fork moved steadily from plate to mouth. No cracks. No guilt I could see. I wondered how long she'd been doing this. How many versions of herself she'd learned to wear. I watched her leave for work and felt something inside me harden. Not anger. Focus. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called her office. I didn't ask for her directly. I asked for her department. The receptionist was friendly, helpful. Too helpful. "Oh, she's not in today," the woman said cheerfully. "She took yesterday and today off. Long weekend, I think." My hand tightened around the phone. "Oh," I said. Must have mixed up the days. When I hung up, the house felt smaller, like the walls had shifted inward. Yesterday and today. She'd looked me in the eye and told me she was working late. Twice. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the grain of the wood. I thought about trust, not as a feeling, but as a structure. How once a beam cracks, the whole thing becomes dangerous to stand under. That evening, I didn't text her. I didn't call. I waited. At 8:42 p.m., my phone rang again. Same number. This time, I answered immediately. "Hi," the voice said, cautious. "I'm really sorry. I think I did it again. I was trying to reach her." I swallowed. "You didn't," I said. "You reached me." Another pause. I could almost hear him weighing options, deciding whether to hang up or push through. "This is awkward," he said finally. "I'm her boss." There it was. The word he'd used as a shield. As permission. "She left her phone here," he continued. "I was just trying to let her know I'm heading out. Here. Not at the office. Not downtown. Just here. Is she okay?" I asked, my voice steady despite the noise in my head. "Yes," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Absolutely. She just stepped out for a minute." I thanked him and ended the call before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking now. Not violently. Just enough to notice. I didn't drive around looking for her. I didn't follow instincts that would only hurt me faster. Instead, I opened our laptop, the one we shared, the one synced to everything. I told myself I was just checking something small. Her calendar was open. Blocked time. Private entries. Repeating appointments labeled only with initials. MT. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Images rushed in uninvited. Her laughter, her distance, the way she'd started guarding her phone like it was part of her body. I realized then that betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day you're standing in the middle of your life, soaked, wondering when it started raining. I didn't confront her that night. When she came home, smiling, apologetic about the long day, I kissed her cheek and asked if she was hungry. She relaxed instantly, as if danger had passed. But it hadn't. I went to bed knowing two things with absolute clarity. She was lying to me, and the truth wasn't going to volunteer itself. If I wanted answers, I'd have to be patient. And patience, I was learning, could be sharper than anger. Waiting changes you. I didn't realize how much until I started doing it on purpose. I became quieter, more observant. I stopped filling silences. I listened the way you do when you already know something is wrong, but need to understand how wrong. She noticed the change, of course. She always did. One night over dinner, she reached across the table and asked if I was okay, her thumb brushing my knuckles like a question mark. "Just tired," I said. She nodded, relieved. That answer fit the version of me she needed. Over the next week, I learned the rhythm of her lies. Late work nights followed by early mornings. Phone face down. New passwords. A careful, almost tender distance that masqueraded as respect. She was kind to me in a way that felt curated, like kindness with boundaries. I didn't go digging through messages. I didn't need to. The shape of the truth was already there. What I needed now was confirmation, not for evidence, but for closure. For my own sanity. The call came again on Thursday. Same number. This time, he didn't speak first. I could hear movement on the other end. A door closing. Footsteps. Then a sigh. "I owe you an apology," he said. I stood by the window, looking out at a street I suddenly felt detached from. For putting you in this position," he replied. "I shouldn't have called. Not the first time. Definitely not again." My chest tightened. "Why did you?" Another pause. He was honest in those pauses. I could hear it. "She said you knew," he said quietly. "That you were fine with it." There it was. Not an explosion. Not a confession. Just a sentence, gently placed, that dismantled years of shared life. "I didn't," I said. Not angry. Just factual. Silence stretched between us. Then, almost like a courtesy, he said, "I didn't mean for this to get complicated." I almost laughed. It already was. You just didn't know. We hung up without saying goodbye. That night, she came home late again. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't ask how work went. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a familiar distance now, watching a show neither of us cared about. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a woman split in two. One part still tethered to the life we built. The other already gone, already choosing something else. I thought about confronting her then, about demanding truth, about forcing the moment. But I didn't, because I realized something that scared me more than betrayal. If I spoke, the version of her I still loved would vanish instantly. And once spoken, some truths can never be unheard. So I waited one more night. I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights she'd done the same with someone else. Wondering when love turned into logistics, when partnership became performance. In the dark, I made a quiet decision. Not about revenge, not about ultimatums, about dignity. If she was going to leave, she would have to look at me when she did it. If she was going to choose someone else, she wouldn't get to rewrite our story to make it easier for herself. The next morning, as she stood in the doorway with her coat on, she hesitated. Just for a second. Tonight might be another late one, she said. I met her eyes and smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly. Honestly. Okay, I said. Just tell me the truth next time. Her breath caught. She nodded, quickly, and left. The door closed. And for the first time since this began, the house didn't feel hollow. It felt like a pause before something irreversible. She didn't come home that night. Not at 10. Not at midnight. Not at 2 in the morning, when the house usually gave up pretending to sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to every car that passed, every sound that wasn't her. Sometime after 3, my phone buzzed. Staying over at a friend's. Exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow. No name. No explanation. Just enough distance packed into one sentence to make it feel official. Tomorrow came with a gray sky and the dull calm that follows a storm you haven't seen yet. I made coffee. I showered. I went to work. I answered emails like my life hadn't quietly split in two. She came home that evening, just before dinner. No rush this time. No caution. She stood in the doorway like a guest who wasn't sure she was welcome. We need to talk, she said. I nodded and sat across from her at the table where we'd once planned vacations and argued about paint colors. She folded her hands, took a breath, and began the speech I now realized she'd been rehearsing for weeks. She said she was confused, that things had changed, that she hadn't meant for it to happen, that it just did. She said the word space a lot. She didn't say his name. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, she looked at me like she was bracing for impact. How long? I asked. She hesitated. Long enough. That was the moment. The final 15% of the story. The quiet drop that leaves no echo. I told her about the calls. About the office. About Mark. Her face drained of color. She didn't deny it. Didn't fight it. She just closed her eyes, like the truth had finally caught up with her, and she was tired of running. I didn't think he'd call you, she whispered. I know, I said. And I meant more than just that. We sat there in silence, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it comes wrapped in politeness, in careful words, in someone trying very hard not to be the villain. I told her I wasn't going to beg. I told her I wasn't going to compete. I told her I deserved honesty long before this moment. She cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let herself feel it. We decided things that night, logistics, next steps, who would sleep where. Ordinary decisions for an extraordinary ending. No shouting, no slammed doors. When she went to pack an overnight bag, I stayed at the table, hands wrapped around a mug gone cold. As the door closed behind her, I expected devastation. What I felt instead was clarity. The call at 11 p.m. hadn't ruined my marriage. It had revealed it. It had pulled back the curtain on something already slipping away, something I'd been holding together with hope and habit. I don't hate her. I still care, in a quieter, more distant way. But I no longer doubt myself. I no longer wonder if I imagine the cracks. Sometimes, late at night, my phone vibrates and my chest still tightens out of instinct. Then I breathe, remind myself where I am, and let the moment pass. Because the hardest truth I learned wasn't that she chose someone else. It was that I finally chose myself.